Hey everyone, it's Jenny at jccards.com. I've got two cards to show you today. They're both using the Tsukineko Wreath Builder stencil, and I'm using For the Love of Stamps stamp sets with images that you might not think to use with the Wreath Builder stencil. So I'm going to show you a couple of different ways. You can use any stamps in your stash with images such as these cute little critters. These are woodland animals by For the Love of Stamps. And later on I'm going to show you even how you can use vehicle stamps to use with your Wreath Builder stencil and create interesting patterns. So let's get started. I'm going to use a square piece of cardstock. I think this is burnt orange from Simon Says Stamp. And I'm choosing this large owl, and I'll be heat embossing my entire image today. I've trimmed down the cardstock to 4 inches by 4 inches, and I've placed it in the Wreath Builder stencil in my MISTI. I'm holding down the stencil with a magnet just to make sure it doesn't shift, and then I'm going to stamp my image. I lined up the owl just to make sure that it fit directly across half of the cardstock, and I've stamped it down with VersaMark embossing ink, which is a clear sticky ink that you use for heat embossing. I'm then stamping it down, turning the cardstock 2 turns, so we're only going to be stamping 4 of the owl image for this as part of the card. And you literally just rotate the cardstock, stamp down the image, lift up, and then turn it 2 turns. I'm going to heat emboss the first image we've used here in copper embossing powder by Altenew. And I'm trying to go for fall colours here, so the burnt orange and the copper on top I thought gave a really nice kind of autumn or fall type feel. I'm just heat embossing it, and that already looks really cool. I really love this stamp set. I love the patterns that the artist has created in each of the images. I'm now using 2 of the teeny tiny little owls from the set, and I've stacked them up in one of the spaces where I haven't done any heat embossing yet. And I'm repeating the entire process again. So I've cut out a lot of it, but as you can see I've stamped them 4 times again, rotating the cardstock in between stampings for 2 turns. I am using my powder tool in between heat embossing just to make sure that there isn't any residual stickiness left behind from the previous embossing. The embossing powder I'm using here is Pink Champagne by Brutus Monroe, which has a sort of warm silvery tone to it, and it looks really nice in contrast against the copper and burnt orange. I'm then placing the piece back inside the stencil for one last stamping. I'm using the small acorn, and I'm stacking it on top of the 2 small owls and stamping it 4 times, again just using 2 turns. And I'm going to heat emboss the acorn in Rose GLINTZ by Wow embossing powder, which is a peachy embossing powder that has flecks of glitter in it. And it again complements the colours we've already used. Now you could leave the card like that, but I am going to do some additional embellishing. I'm going to first off adhere it to some craft cardstock, which I've trimmed to 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 inches, and I'm going to back it with some bright craft foam just to give it a bit more sturdiness, and then I've put that on a card base which is 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. As a finishing touch, I'm using Nuvo glitter drops by Tonic Studios, and I think I might have overdone it a little bit here. Less is more, as they say, but I'm using a couple of different colours. They'll be in the supplies list below this video, and I'm just filling in some of the spaces. In hindsight, I think I probably would have just left it at the 1 dot, but I couldn't resist. And finally, for our sentiment, there's a few good ones in this stamp set. I chose one of them and I've stamped it in VersaMark onto black cardstock, and I'm heat embossing in white just to add a little pop in the centre. I'm popping it up on foam tape directly in the middle of our pattern, and that completes the card. So for my second card, we're going to dispense with the heat embossing, and I'm going to show you how you can use even the most unlikely stamp set with your Wreath Builder stencil. So this is the card I've come up with. It's from the I Love London stamp set by For the Love of Stamps. And I just wanted to have a play with the Wreath Builder here and see what I could come up with. So for this one, I've first taken the bus, and again I'm using a 4x4" panel of white cardstock, and I'm stamping the bus in Midnight Black ink from Catherine Pooler. And initially I was going to do the 2 turns the same way we did with the owls. However, I thought it'd be fun to see how it looked by doing just 1 turn. And as it turns out, it comes up with a very interesting pattern. Almost, you kind of lose almost the clear look of the bus. And when you step back and look at it, it's almost like a spirograph, if you remember those from when you were a kid. There's a very interesting pattern that was created there. I've taken the image of Big Ben from the set, and again I'm going to stamp that 8 times. It will come off the edge because of the height of the image. I should have potentially moved it close to the centre when I did my stamping, but actually because we're going for more of an abstract pattern look here, I wasn't too bothered, but you could obviously change it. And I'm stamping it in Rockin red ink by Catherine Pooler. So I am from England. The flag, the United Kingdom, is the Union flag, which is red, white and blue. So of course I couldn't resist going for a blue sentiment. So I'm using a new ink from Catherine Pooler, which is Suede Shoes, which is a really nice bright blue colour. And I've stamped the sentiment directly onto the panel. I'm backing the panel onto a 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 piece of black cardstock, the craft foam in bright red just for a little pop of colour at the side, and then adhering it down to a 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 card base. And that completes the card. I'm really pleased with how this one turned out. I love the unusual pattern that the bus created, which was completely unintentional. And I hope it gives you some inspiration to play around with the Wreath Builder stencil with some of the stamps in your stash you may never have thought of for use with that stencil. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please consider subscribing or check out a couple of these other videos that you might enjoy. I hope you have an awesome day. Bye!